All right, it is Friday, and it's our favorite time of the week. It is Friday, 2 o'clock for Cub Chat Live, and we are super excited because this is it's a great season that we are in. And I'm not talking about the weather outside because it is a balmy, blistery 50 degrees here in North Texas. And with me is Phil Jensen, who I think your weather is just a little bit different than ours right now. What's the temperature there, Phil?
I don't know, but I know the troop camp out this weekend, the high is below zero a couple days.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So I'm a native born Floridian, and so I don't think my blood is that thick. Uh, so good for you guys, and I know it's going to be a fantastic weekend. So you're probably wondering at home, first of all, where's Gina, right? Because we all love Gina or Aaron. We gave them a little bit of a break this weekend. And so you've got me, Anthony Berger, National Director of Cub Scouting. And with me is my special guest from the Scouts BSA committee, Phil Jensen. But also, more importantly, his most important role is that he is a parent and leader in a scout troop, newly minted because his son just crossed over into a troop. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about Weeblos to Scout transition, because this really should be the time of year. So before we get too much into a deep dive, let's do some shout outs. Early on, we got Pack 3310 from Akron, Ohio. So thanks for logging on so early. Also Pack 19 and Troop 19 from Auburn, California. I once was hung around Auburn, Alabama, but this is Auburn, California. And so thank you. Also, Wendy. Wendy's doing something that we want everyone to do, which is Wendy has tagged a couple of her friends from her pack. So maybe make sure that you tag your Arrow of Light Den leader or your Scoutmaster or Assistant Scoutmaster from your local troop. So thanks again all for coming and joining today's show. So, Phil, help us out here.
First thing to talk about, I think that is probably right in your wheelhouse is I think we've all come on to, as Cub Scout leaders, the new changes in the program, and we're excited about those. But when you cross over to the troop from being a den leader like I was, and you're excited about the program, it was kind of surprising how little the troop leadership knew about the changes that had happened at the Cub Scout level. So I was hoping maybe you could rehash that to let not only the Cub Scout leaders know, but also any troop leaders who are watching and what they can prepare for.
Yes, and we often do get a lot of crossover views. So there's a couple things that are really important for scout leaders to know. So if you got some scout leaders watching or you're tagging them, or even for Arrow of Light leaders, folks that may have been around for a while. So first and foremost, Weeblos is no longer preparing scouts to join Scouts BSA. So that's the big one. That's for most of us legacy folks that, I was a Cub Scout growing up, and that's always what the purpose of Weeblos was. That's no longer the case. Weeblos is just simply the fourth grade program of Cub Scouting. And so under the Cub Scout program updates, what we did was we separated that out so that fifth graders are Arrow of Light Scouts, and they are no longer a subgroup of Weeblos. So now we can build the Arrow of Light program completely around preparing Cub Scouts to join Scouts BSA. So it is a standalone program now. And if you're in a troop and you're watching and you didn't know, there's even an Arrow of Light handbook. So we have a new Cub Scout handbook. And you might be thinking, well, what's the value of having a handbook if we're all going to be in an Arrow of Light for a couple months? Well, we thought about that, and we did work with the Scouts BSA committee. And as you get through the book, and after your Arrow of Light, we have, this looks familiar, Scouts BSA handbook material is in the Arrow of Light book. So when you finish your Arrow of Light, we have content here that gets you to the Scout badge of rank. So all that content, so that first meeting that a scout goes to in a troop from Arrow of Light, they can still use their Arrow of Light handbook to work through their Scout badge of rank until they're ready to buy their Scouts BSA handbook. So I think, I think the last point that we talked about, we've had shows about this too, about camping and Cub camping, is that Arrow of Light dens, they form patrols, but that's only in name only. That's only to kind of get them used to the naming of what a small group is. A small group in a troop is a patrol. So they form a patrol, but they can actually go den camping, and they can. This is kind of a new thing. They can actually go camping at a Scouts BSA camporee. So they could go, and instead of just being day visitors, Arrow of Light fifth graders, they can actually camp overnight as a den. Now they'd still follow Cub Scout camping rules. That's the thing that we really emphasize in our past shows. So that's kind of in a nutshell. I think those four big points. And before we get to the next thing, we've got some other shout outs that we want to give. Of course, Pack 222, right down the street, Prosper, Texas. Cub Scout Pack 777 from Surf City, North Carolina. We're going from coast to coast here. And Pack 693, Brighton, Indiana. A leader and an Arrow of Light parent actually planning their first blue and gold, so listening attentively today. So I guess that's another myth that we haven't mentioned it, but we do want to make sure we kind of break that myth. You do not have to cross over at blue and gold. That's not, that is up to your pack. If you have the tradition of doing that and it's working for you, great. Don't stop doing it just because that. But if some folks are behind or everyone feels rushed to do it by then don't. So make sure that you're planning that together as a pack and not kind of hold yourselves to something that's unreasonable. So we're in January and February, and we get this a lot. And people are like, okay, so why are we trying to rush these kids into a troop? They were Arrow of Lights just a couple months ago. Maybe some of them just joined for the first time as fifth graders. Why do we want to push them into a troop so early in the year in January, February? Why shouldn't we just wait till May or June?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of reasons for that. One of them is preparation, and the other one is every troop kind of has a rhythm. So we'll probably talk about both of those. One is preparation. We know that the AOL year prepares scouts to be in a Scouts BSA troop. So you need to give them enough time on the front end to be prepared to enter the troop. But you also need to give them enough time once they're in the troop, because there's a new system, there's youth-led systems. They're a lot more independent. And so because of that, we need to make sure that they're in the troop long enough to be functional, for example, when they go to summer camp. And we want them to have a good experience. And a lot of that is time. There's relationship building to be had. The parents need to feel comfortable. And so, Memorial Day weekend, if that's the first time you're meeting people in your troop, if you go to summer camp mid-June, it could be a pretty tight turnaround. Both in a skills and relationship-based way. So that's something to consider. The other thing is every troop kind of has a rhythm, right? Where this is typically when we do this thing first. This would be best if we could get this done. And if your rhythm is that you go camping every other month and you miss a camp out, you could maybe miss some key activities along the way. So you want to provide ample opportunities for that. I think the rhythm week to week is good, right? As far as, troop meetings and PLCs once a month. But in addition to that, campouts, this is the camporee when we usually do that. You want to make sure you're not inadvertently messing with that too much. I'll add one other thing too about timing is that it's often not just your patrol or den's decision, in that a troop may be accepting scouts from a variety of packs, and they don't want them maybe coming at slightly different times because it kind of draws out the orientation process. And so with the new program, with the AOL, you're having so many electives, it's good to plan your year, make sure that you're coming at a time when troops can expect you. And if that doesn't quite work out, fill in an elective or time it so, maybe you save that elective to do it at a little bit ramped up level in a Scouts BSA troop. So those are some reasons why.
Yeah, I think those are all great reasons. I can tell. I remember a troop that we joined when we first crossed over. My son and I from from Cub Scouts to Scouts BSA troop. This troop just had this ingenious plan, and I've seen it now mirrored across the country, where they had a meeting with all the parents of all the Cub Scouts, right? And as the new Cub Scouts or new Scouts were with the troop, they kind of pulled us aside and they talked to us specifically just about summer camp. They told us where they were planning on going. They told us the costs so that we can be prepared for that. And then this mom did this great spiel about how she first joined the troop. She was a little anxious about her precious 10-and-a-half-year-old son who's made out of glass, right? Going on a camp out to another state with a bunch of 17-year-olds, right? 16 and 17-year-olds, right? Because sometimes there's a huge difference between those Cub Scouts when they first join the troop and those older senior scouts, right? And we like to see it as scouters and scout leaders. We're like, oh, that's great mentoring opportunities. But, to a new parent, they're like, oh, what's so it's getting comfortable and understanding that, those older scouts don't necessarily want to hang around with your 10-and-a-half-year-olds, so don't worry. And then we also put them in smaller groups and they do watch over them. So it really helps kind of ease that comfort level. But also she had this amazing little diorama. It was a shoebox and it looked like a Foot Locker. And she went through piece by piece. She had these little miniature things of what your child should pack for summer camp. And it was just the presentation, the thought that was put into it. So I can't say enough how important it is when you do this in January and February and you're crossing the kids over, you have time to do this with your troop. You've got that time for the parents. And that's my key thing, for the parents to get comfortable with the leadership and the other scouts just as much as the scouts.
I'll add one other thing to that. We often hear, why can't my scout just join in December? Like, he's ready, we're ready. We've been in Cub Scouts for 5 or 6 years now with the new program. Why can't we just come in after Thanksgiving? And I would caution that for 2 reasons. The first reason is that, for example, the camping requirements now in Arrow of Light and Cub Scouting, like you're talking about, there are differences, concrete differences. For example, the parents can camp with the child in the tent. And so as some parents, like you're saying, whose children are made of glass, of course, when they're going through that experience, they can be a little more hands-on in the camping experience, and they can be on both sides, the parent and the child. There can be some comfort there that is not the way to do it in a Scouts BSA troop. Also, it gives time to explore Scouts BSA troops. Right. So typically same chartered organization, we go one from the other, but sometimes there are reasons, perceived reasons or real reasons to shop around. And it's in the book that's, allowed and sanctioned. Right. But it could be as simple as the troop meets on the night when we play hockey. Right. We're Northern Minnesotans up here, and that's a real thing. So allow people time to be confident about their troop choice. And if you're spinning that really quickly so that, November or December is the join date, you're really kind of cutting short some of that preparatory time, both as far as skills and as far as readiness for the program in general.
Yeah, one of the requirements for Bobcat, so Bobcat, that's another big change that is part of the Cub Scout program updates, is that Bobcat is no longer just a one-time badge. It's now an adventure. It's a required adventure. And we say it's designed to be the first required adventure, and mostly because of Arrow of Light. Because within the Bobcat for Arrow of Light is to go visit a troop. And that's where they start learning the Scouts BSA motto. They use the Scouts sign and salute. And that's kind of what the old adventure was called, Scouting Adventure, where all that content is now in Bobcat. But visiting a scout troop might take some time, right? They have to schedule that visit. So we didn't want anyone to have to be held up and earning their Bobcat first and then doing the other program. So, or the other adventure. So, that is something that is ingrained in the requirements for Bobcat, because we want them to do that as early as possible. And so ideally, you're visiting a troop that you would probably most likely join. And that troop is providing your pack, or specifically your Arrow of Light den, with support and some guidance. It takes a lot to be an Arrow of Light den leader, right? You're like quasi scoutmaster, right? You've got to be more comfortable in the outdoors than let's say a lion or tiger den leader. You got to be comfortable in learning new skills along with your scouts. So it really helps to have a assistant scoutmaster from a troop that's helping kind of coach and guide that Arrow of Light den leader. And so I think what you also hit on was the rhythm of the troop, right? And what we mean by that is troops have their own program, right? They've got a plan that they're executing, that they did their annual planning, and they're executing that. And if they're not planning on new people joining yet, because once your child joins, when a Cub Scout joins a troop, the troop will start forming new patrols or reorganizing their existing patrols. And there's lots of different ways to do that. There's not one single way to do that. But for example, one method is that they put all the new kids into a patrol. So ideally, they want to get all the new kids in the troop at the same time so that they have that patrol functioning and they know how many kids are in there.
I think that's a big transition too, with the parents, is the change in leadership between the pack and the troop. And I know a lot of our listeners know that that's true. And I think like you touched on, the patrol nomenclature, the language around a patrol kind of helps that a little bit. But I just want to say, as a former den leader, as of like 2 days ago, and now a new troop leader this week, I think it's important to know that, you know, there are good reasons why the parental involvement levels are where they are, right? In Cub Scouting, the parents need to be in charge, and in the Scouts BSA program, the parents need to step back, and because there's a developmental arc where the young people are ready for that. But at the same time, it is real that it feels like some whiplash, right? Like we get into the program and we get more and more excited as it more and more resembles the scouting we know and love, right? And we get more ramped up and we meet more frequently probably. And then as soon as we cross over into the troop, where honestly a lot of us are more comfortable because we were in troops more recently than packs as parents, just as we're getting into it, we say, thank you very much, go away. Right. And it's not true, right? There are a lot of ways to serve the troop too, but you're no longer planning the meetings and living quite as vicariously as you were. And that feels like a swing. And not only that, now you need to learn the skill to play defense and keep yourself out of it on purpose so that they have room to grow and to stretch. And so it is that way for a reason. And having parents in the troop who can help you with that transition is especially important. And you need to make sure that everybody is ready on both sides of the bridge when that crossover happens. Parents on both sides and the youth on both sides.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. So we're gonna, let's say we're visiting a troop and we're talking about visiting maybe multiple troops, but even if we just go to one troop, what should I be looking for? What should I be teaching my scouts, or what should I be looking for as a parent or an Aerovite den leader to know that like this is a good fit? Like this is going to be a troop that's maximizing the program and that the kids are going to get the best out of it.
I'll add an asterisk to the beginning. So I live in Duluth, Minnesota right now, and we are blessed with several troops, and we have some collegial relationships, and you know, we kind of shop around, and it's all good. I also grew up in a town of 700 people where there was one option. Right. And so it can work. If you don't have choices, don't feel like you're missing out necessarily. There's a lot of value in the intimacy that comes from smaller groups like that. So it can work both ways, and I've seen it both ways. And so that's fine. But I think different troops have different cultures. They have cultures about how often they meet, how intensely their volunteers and scouts are invested in the program. And that might not be just valuing the program. That might be in a smaller town, everybody's playing 3 sports. And in a larger city, they're a little more specialized, right? Some go outdoors more than others, right? Some camp out once a month. Some camp out once every other month. Some are maybe especially service oriented. So there are a lot of reasons why fit can vary troop to troop. But if I had to pick one thing that was kind of the single thing to keep an eye out for, it is how much are the parents involved in the running of the meetings and the operations of their campouts. If the parents are the ones doing it so it feels like a super pack or a supra pack, you know, just Cub Scouts extended, they're probably not engaging in the program fully the same way that they could be. And if that's your only choice, that you need to go there, I'm just going to plug it. Go to Wood Badge and learn the rules for a while. But I think that's the single biggest question, is how much are the youth involved? Is the patrol method utilized fully? Is there a structure where there are youth leadership working together across patrols or patrol to troop level youth leadership? Do they feel comfortable engaging the adults without feeling like the adults are going to just plop themselves in the middle and take it over? Watch for that single thing, because it often informs a lot of the other things you'd see.
You know, we didn't. This is one of the questions that we didn't really kind of set up for, and you took the words right out of my mouth. It's just who's running the meeting. And I like to say a perfectly run scout troop doesn't look like it on the surface, right? If it's truly the youth are being allowed to lead, mistakes are going to happen, right? And things aren't rushed into. Now, we're not talking about health and safety issues, right? What we're talking about is like who starts the meeting, and is the leader like making sure that the meeting starts on time at 7 o'clock every, or does it go like maybe 7:10 and it still hasn't started yet, and they're letting the youth kind of learn that importance of starting things on time and delegating. So I think it's really important that you do see that those youth, because again, it may not be organized. It may, again, you're going to get maybe some miscommunication. Maybe you're going to have to filter again through the Scoutmaster of what the youth said during the meeting. You want to double check that on the website or the newsletter or however other official communication goes out. But once again, I think that's the value of the scouting program. That is the true magic, is that in no other organization are youth not just taught leadership skills, but they are put into leadership positions at like 11 and 12 years old. And that only works if they're allowed to actually experience that. And it's a safe place to fail. Again, we're not talking about health and safety issues. What we're talking about is, simple things like starting the meeting on time, right? Making sure a phone call gets done, those types of things. We did have a question. And first of all, I do want to shout out to Melinda, who's she's been her youngest son's den leader since he was in kindergarten. And this February, he will cross over into Scouts BSA. Melinda, thank you. Thank you for that leadership of that long tenured leadership. And it is very different. And so hopefully you're hearing what we're saying and being prepared so that when you cross over that, how to best help in. And that's where sometimes the Scoutmasters, when new parents come in, they're kind of you feel like they're telling you to like back off and that we got this. That's not what they mean. They mean back off. The youth have this, right? And get engaged behind the scenes. Find something behind the scenes to do, because trust me, troops need the help and they do want the help, but it's a very different position than being a Cub Scout leader. We also had another question about let's see, where was it? Lori, she is an AOL den leader, and she's finding it really hard to get everything done in that short amount of time, right? So, Lori, that all depends on when you started your program up, because we know that we have this big span. Sometimes dens start as early as August, or maybe even during the summer, but usually after a formal recruitment event in the fall. So sometimes it's August, sometimes it's October. That we see dens kind of getting their program year started. So I would agree, if it's October when you got started, yeah, it might be a little tight. But also when you look at the requirements for the required adventures for Air of Light, we did a couple things on purpose. One, there's a couple of required adventures that only have like 2 requirements. Like the citizenship adventure only has 2 requirements. Others have a little bit more, but like Bobcat has like 8, but that's because they're learning Scouts BSA stuff and still can probably be done in one meeting. Or you sandwich your troop visitation, which is a Bobcat requirement, and you work with the troop and say, hey, can some of the senior boys teach the Bobcat to our kids during the visit? So there you've knocked it out, and you killed 2 birds with one stone. And I will tell you, and I'm not bashful by saying this, I was a lazy Cub Master. And what I mean by that is if I can find someone else to deliver the program, I did. And so it made it a lot easier. So it makes it a lot easier to be able to join with that troop. I would also look at your elective adventures. You only need 2 elective adventures. Well, the reason why we created adventures that cross all the ranks is that it makes it easier for den leaders to not have to plan every single adventure. So for example, race time is Pinewood Derby race or the Rain Gutter Regatta, right? And so your pack probably already does that. And so that's one less adventure you have to worry about completing to earn the Air of Light. And if you look at the others, that maybe the pack does a bike ride and you guys do that, or does a fishing trip. So we made those across the ranks to make it really easy so that really the den leader can focus on the required adventures. And knowing that family and reference adventures are traditionally done at home, as well as the personal safety awareness ones. And so, although for Air of Light, we're talking mostly first aid, so we get that. So hopefully that helped you, Lori. But again, remember, this is the best thing in Cub Scouting, and it's the motto, which is do your best, right? That's all we're asking you to do is just do your best. Again, don't feel like you have to do in January, February. Coordinate with your troops. Kind of have a calendar out of when you think you guys will be done, and then planning that crossover and reaching out to the troop and seeing if they'd be willing to help you with a couple of adventures. We also found that sometimes to kind of speed things up, folks may meet more than an hour than what they may have traditionally been meeting. So look at your meeting times and your cadence. Sometimes we saw dens several years ago when we first welcomed girls in the program into Cub Scouting. We had dens that were meeting on Saturdays for like 2 or 3 hours to ensure that they were able to get through the program within a shorter time span. So those are things, that's food for thought, and being able to complete the requirements in time or in a reasonable time. Let's see, what else do we have here?
Could I jump in with one thing, if that's okay? We talked about parental involvement, and I jokingly said, you get to Scouts BSA and people said, go away now. Thank you very much. Go away. I think there are a couple roles that new parents can get into right away, actually. And one is that a lot of troops struggle with their den chief program because it kind of gets put onto the Scoutmaster. And when that happens, there are a lot of other things on the Scoutmaster's plate, right? So new parents who come in from a pack might be especially well positioned to advise or kind of build relationships between packs and troops that interest both parties, right? Because packs like to have Scouts BSA scouts come down because the older scouts are always cool. And then the troops, it's a membership thing for them. And so if you have relationships with a pack that are existing, that might be a good way to insert yourself in a very helpful way that kind of leverages what you already know, as opposed to needing to learn the new system from scratch. I think that also kind of ties into, for example, advancement. There's a what should I do now with advancement, right? It's not go away, see you later. There are ways to be a merit badge counselor, for example, where you as a Cub Scout leader were kind of the merit badge counselor for everything, omni merit badge counselor, right? And I think there are ways to serve more specifically, which is good, but also just know that while the youth might be picking which merit badges to do and the youth might be kind of driving some of that, a lot of what they do, it sounds kind of silly, but a lot of how they approach that will be informed by the example that you set, especially later in the Cub Scout years. How you approached adventures, how you how seriously you took it, right? They will model that whether they know it or not. And so even if you feel like you're not helping, you kind of set a course when you push them away. And you can kind of take maybe some solace in that. So we really noticed a connection with how strong the leadership was at the pack level and the behavior toward advancement that the youth have when they come in. And so just know that it won't be realized right away by them, but other people see it and are thankful immediately.
Yeah, I think you bring something up that's really good about advancement at Scouts BSA and how vastly different it is from Cub Scouting once again. So the biggest difference is that in Cub Scouting, it was grade specific. So everyone at this age is working towards this rank. That's not true in Scouts BSA. Scouts BSA switches to at your own pace. And so there's several ranks that Scouts earn without even earning a merit badge yet, right? And so if you're trying to associate merit badges or adventures, and so I have to earn merit badges to earn my next rank, that's not true. So I guess that's the other thing, is be familiar with what the Scout badge of rank requirements are, and then the lower ranks of tenderfoot, second class, first class, so that you understand that, oh, okay, so just because my son hasn't earned a merit badge or my daughter hasn't earned a merit badge yet, that doesn't mean they're behind, right? They could be well advancing. And I would see that as just an opportunity to have a conversation with your child about something that they're doing, to show interest in what they're doing instead of using it as a way of saying, well, have you done these requirements yet? Have you done this yet? Ask, so how'd it go? How close are you? How do you feel about that? What's your, are you concerned about, the Scoutmaster Conference? Or do you have any questions? Kind of be more of a coach than I was going to say a manager of trying to manage the process, because that too is the learning experience, right? And Scouts, from a very early age, we teach kids how to accomplish big goals by breaking them down into smaller goals and smaller achievable goals in shorter time frames.
Directly to that, this is not official language from the Scouts BSA committee or anything, but this is my take, which is it can be very daunting, like Anthony's talking about, with a very long trail to Eagle or something. And personally, and I think a lot of leaders share this, even if unofficially, just scrap that immediately. And that the most important rank in Scouts BSA, and maybe in scouting, I don't know, is first class, because first class demonstrates your competence in a variety of skills, and you're kind of you're kind of ready to take on a camp out or to go to NYLT or whatever. And so don't say the word Eagle like that early on. Like it's not a deal, because it's so far away. Preparation for it is kind of moot. There's no way to prepare for it. You can't tell the difference. They're not behind. Just by being an active scout, you will naturally advance.
Yes.
And they might start in a season where you start in the spring, but they're in track, and so they feel behind right away. There's none of that, right? I didn't start until I was after 7th grade because we didn't have a troop in my small town, right? We really didn't have options, right? So when we talk about that kind of thing, it is at your own pace, and pushing it too hard can mean that it pushes them away. Just let the gears slip for a bit, just a bit. And when it catches, they'll be more excited, and it'll happen on its own in a way that is pretty rewarding to see. So the advancement is fundamentally different on purpose, like Anthony is saying, and just trust not only in the adult leadership, but also in the youth's engagement. Once it clicks, it will click. And don't worry about Eagle, just worry about scouting.
Yeah, I guess that's also, as we're thinking about this, I'm thinking about what the experience of a parent, but also maybe an aerolite den leader, right, is to help set that expectation with your parents, right? Share this information with your parents in your den. And one of the things would be, look, what this situation is more than likely going to happen, which is you've got, let's say, 6 kids in your den, they join the troop, right? And 2 months in, 2 of them have advanced 2 ranks, and some haven't finished their first rank yet, right? And so they start becoming, when they're all used to earning the same award at the same time. So that is something that when going into it, that's the way it's going to be like, it's a lot easier to digest than it is to find out, like at the first court of honor, having half the kids that were in the den are getting a badge of rank and the other half aren't. And the parents understanding why. And so hopefully some of the advice and situations we've been giving here will help you coach those parents in understanding that. Should the AOLs do a Scoutmaster Conference? So the answer is no. Scoutmaster Conference is a Scouts BSA advancement thing. And so not until they are officially in Scouts BSA should there be a Scoutmasters Conference. And I don't think it's required for Scout badge of rank. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It is. Yeah.
It is
so
required. Okay.
It's pretty quick, and that one is a little bit different. There's no board of review for the Scout rank, but there's a Scoutmaster Conference, and we're not going to go through all those details here, but just know that sounds scarier than it is. It's not a thesis defense, right? You're not going in there bulletproof. It's more of an issue of making sure they're comfortable and answering questions and having a conversation with a young man or woman than it is about any kind of like test to pass. And I'll add on just one thing that Anthony said too. When you feel behind, perceived or real, the conversation immediately pivots to a place where it didn't pivot before, which is you have the agency as a young person to change that, right? So now we have a learning moment of, I feel like I'm behind. It's like, well, friend, you're not waiting for your den leader anymore to do it for you or to present you that material. Go approach your Scoutmaster. Go approach that assistant Scoutmaster with whom you feel like you're the closest. Then ask how you can nudge that along And boy, the first time they take that on and they see the progress for something that they created, like de novo from nothing, that is a powerful moment that you can really leverage into a bigger scouting experience. But if you push it, it'll never happen. And it kind of turned into Cub Scouting extended after that.
Yeah, and I'll emphasize one last time that we're not talking about health and safety issues, right? If you see the kids doing something dangerous, stop them, right? Step in, right? Don't wait for the youth leadership to do something, right? That's what we're talking about, though, are these other little things. Like, for example, I remember my kind of aha moment with my son was is we went shopping. We were the grub master for the troop, so we were buying the food for the camp out, right? And so he had his lists that the patrol came up with, and they were going to have pancakes. I was going to say something, but I kept my mouth shut because syrup was not on the list, and he did not pick it up, and he didn't think of it, because that's a good case of, you know what? They're not going to starve if they don't have syrup, right? They can still eat the pancakes, right? But it's a lesson from that moment forward. I guarantee you that every time that patrol decided to have pancakes, they put syrup on the list, right? So that's the learning moment, right? If I had stepped in and fixed it, that lesson would not have been taught. And so it's things like that that makes Scouts BSA different than Cub Scouting. And the more you know about that, the more you can kind of prepare your parents and yourself as an Aerovite den leader. All right. So we are coming up on time. I will add one last bit of information for both of our Scouts BSA leaders and Aerovite den leaders. Aerovite den leaders probably already know this, but the updated program for Cub Scouting for Aerovite, each of the required adventures has pieces that is purposely preparing the Cub Scout for Scouts BSA experience. And so that's why the outdoor adventure requires them to go camping, right? That's a requirement. We really had this mindset that we are preparing you for Scouts BSA. And so Scouts BSA they go camping, right? And so we want to make sure that they're prepared for that. And you can see each little line, for example, they have to track the hours of service they give in their community service. Well, that's the first time and only time we're asking them to track service hours, because in Scouts BSA, that's something that they have to do. In the Duty to God adventure, one of the requirements is for them to talk about their faith. Well, that's something that's a very common question that happens at a court of honor, or a board of review, where we want a child to verbalize what their faith is and what they think about that, right? Not that there's any wrong answers to that, but it's just one way to be able to connect and prepare our scouts for Scouts BSA. Any closing words, Phil? This has been fantastic. I hope this has been good information for our viewers.
Oh, I just wanted to say thanks for inviting us. I've been a den leader in the new program for the last, 5 or 6 months. And it's been a big change. And I have noticed the parental involvement is different because they feel oriented differently toward the Scouts BSA change. And the interacting with Scouts BSA needn't be strictly by the book, right? In the sense that troops and packs can integrate more fully, even if not with camping technically, right? Even if not with some activities. Building that relationship with a troop not only puts people's minds at ease as they cross the bridge, but it also kind of rejuvenates or energizes both parties, right? To see that they have new people coming into a troop, or to see that there is a place to go that's not very scary after the pack. And so those kinds of bridge building activities, whether intentional or not, or formal or not, can really strengthen both programs, I think.
Awesome. I totally agree. All right. Well, thank you guys. I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. I know it's a long weekend for most of us. As we celebrate and honor the memory of Martin Luther King Jr., who, by the way, if you didn't know this, was a Cub Scout. All right, that's it for Cub Chat Live, and we will see you next week.
Thanks for tuning in today. Be sure to catch next week's episode. Same time, same place. And let us know how we're doing at go.scoutingmagazine.org/rate Cub Chat. We love feedback and ideas for new episodes, And you can visit blog.scoutingmagazine.org/CubChatLive for all our past video episodes. You can see us live. Except it's recorded, but it was live. Okay, see you next week.